Okay, we are on.
Okay, and please type into the chat room if you guys have difficulties hearing or any kind of technological issues. I am going to be asking Daniel to field those because I cannot see, I don't think I can see the chat room from my presentation screen. But please feel free as we move into this webinar to ask questions in the chat room. And I might not get to all the questions during the webinar itself, but I will respond to them afterwards, and we'll get those posted for you to see the answers. So my name's Barb, last name's Miranda. I am a partnership specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau. I'm based here in Juneau, so not far from Daniel, in the across the channel from Daniel, actually. And what I'm really pleased with this partnership with the Alaska State Library to help present to librarians and other people that serve community members that are going to be, you guys are going to be asked to assist with the census response. This is the first census with an online response option. So I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to have sort of a look at what the questionnaire is going to look like online and walk through some different aspects of the census. So today I'm going to be talking about really quickly, why the 2020 census matters to Alaskans, 2020 census operational calendar for Alaska. I'm going to present that so you can see how big the online response time is, and really directly talk to show you how you can assist getting a complete count with the online response option. We'll go over the partner roles and sideboards, the do's and the don'ts of online response assistance, and then we'll really take a deep dive into the online response questionnaire, which to my knowledge has, it's not public yet, so you guys are really getting an insider look at what the questionnaire looks like. The goal of every census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place, and with your assistance, I'm pretty sure we can get that done here in Alaska. So real quickly, why does the 2020 census matter? If you guys have heard my talks before, you know there's two reasons that we always go over, the power and the money piece. The census is in the Constitution and has been conducted every 10 years since 1790 for congressional representation and a reapportionment for the federal government. We're not going to get, Alaska is not going to get another congressional seat out of this census. We're not quite big enough in population to earn that second seat, but the numbers are also used for state redistricting, so the census still remains important in Alaska for that power piece. The money piece is a big one for Alaska. There's over $675 billion worth of funds distributed annually across the country based on census-derived funding formulas, and that's $3.2 billion that comes to Alaska every year to fund things we care about, almost $3,000 per Alaskan counted. So here's the state redistricting piece, the lovely pie that we get to cut up every 10 years into different size pieces that hopefully have the same amount of ingredients or the same amount of people in the each district. So state redistricting is going to happen after the census numbers are delivered to each state on April 1st of 2021. And after each census, state officials use the results to redraw the boundaries of their state legislative districts. And it's going to happen here in Alaska, and it will make a difference in how we're represented in our state capital. The money piece, a little bit more of a deeper dive into that. So $675 billion distributed across the country, 3.2 billion reasons why we care about the census here in Alaska. It goes for things like business and industry loans, school programs, Title I grants, our school lunch programs, Head Start. If you care about the ferry, you care about the highway dollars that come to the state. A lot of the federal highway dollars, not a lot, but a chunk of those go into the Alaska Marine Highway. So we want to make sure we get those federal dollars for our transportation infrastructure. Libraries get federal funds. So there's all sorts of funding that comes into the state based on census-derived funding formulas for programs that matter to Alaskans. Unfortunately, census participation in Alaska was the lowest in the country in the 2010 census. 64% of the people in Alaska responded to the census in a timely fashion. What that means is that almost 250,000 people, a little bit over, required follow-up by a census taker to get their responses. So 250,000 Alaskans needed knocks on the door to get their census information in. I think we can do better than that in this census, and I think the online response is really going to be something that helps us get a better response rate in the 2020 census. So who are the hard to count? This is the standard list, and I've highlighted the ones that librarians, tribal members, folks that serve our hardest to count might be focusing on with assistance with online response. So our frequent movers and snowbirds, think of the folks that move back in the summer, seasonal migrant workers included, capturing those in libraries during events where people might gather with an online response event is something that you guys can do and the Census Bureau will be doing. People experiencing homelessness are hard to count, and we can capture them in a special counts for service-based enumeration, but they can also be assisted to respond online if devices are provided in public places for them. Foreign-born and immigrant populations might be some of the folks you serve, and tribal members are all on the list of folks that I think can be best served with an online response, support. There's different types of enumeration in the census. New for the 2020 census is the self-response via the internet or the phone. Many of you might remember the paper form. That will still be deployed, and every household that will eventually get a paper form if they don't respond online. Most places where people do not get mail delivered to their physical address will receive a paper form left at their door as well, but anybody can respond online via the internet. So paper survey, if they're not comfortable with the paper survey, they can call on the phone. They can use the internet to respond, and if none of those happen, then an in-person response will happen with knocks on the door. In parts of Alaska, right now, people are being counted in person because of an early operation we call Remote Alaska. And in some places where there's remote cabins here in Southeast and on Kodiak, people will also be counted in person. Just because they're in a place where an in-person count is enforced does not mean that they cannot also respond online if that's their preference. So just know that anybody can respond online. Here's some key dates for the 2020 census. As you might have heard through the media, that census operations began for the entire nation on January 21st with a kickoff event in Tooksuk Bay, and enumeration has been occurring throughout our off-the-road areas in Western Alaska, in the interior and Eastern Alaska are coming up and being counted here in February and March, and the North Slope and Aleutians are going to be counted in person in March and April. March 12th of 2020, that's right around the corner, is when online response opens up nationwide. So that is the first time for most Alaskans and the rest of the nation to be able to begin to respond to the census. If they're not living in the off-the-road areas that are being counted early, this is the first option to respond online. Around that same time, paper surveys are going to be starting to be delivered to the doors, and invitations are going to be mailed to households that receive their mail at their physical addresses. Invitations to respond online are going to be mailed out right around the same time. April 1st is Census Day. April 1st is the National 2020 Census Day, and that's an important day for residency rules. If people have questions about where to count themselves, remember I said we want to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. Well, if people have questions about where their usual residence is, April 1st becomes an important day. Wherever they're residing on April 1st is typically, and if they, is going to be where they're counted. if they don't have a usual residence elsewhere or they split their time equal, that's why April 1st becomes important. For snowbirds that might spend more time in Alaska than elsewhere, they should count themselves at their usual residence here in Alaska. So July 31st is when online response closes and the count is over. So if people have not responded to the census online by April, by end of April, early May, that's when non-response follow-up starts, when census enumerators will start knocking on people's doors to get response, the surveys done. But people have all the way till the end of July to respond to the census in any of the ways that are provided. On December 31st, the Census Bureau delivers the count to Congress and the President, and April 1st of 2021, end of March, the states receive the official count. The paper form is going to be delivered to every door where people don't receive their mail. And I just want to address one issue that we've been hearing about the paper form is what happens if there's not enough space for to answer the race or ethnicity or fill in my name. And it's okay to write outside the lines. You always hear, keep inside the lines. Well, in this case, anything that's written onto the census form is going to be accepted, including your native name if you want to have that documented for posterity. After 72 years, this information is released, and a lot of people do their genealogy research using census data, and it's kind of cool for folks to go back and see what great-grandma wrote in as far as race and ethnicity, and if you have a name that you want your ancestors to recognize, you can put it on the form too. But until then, your answers are completely safe and confidential. The security is paramount. The census is confidential, and it is required by law that people respond, but the census answers are reported out in statistical format only until that magic 72 years is over, when it gets released for genealogy research. No response information is going to be shared with any other government agency in a way that makes people personally identifiable. And all census employees swear a lifetime oath to protect respondent information, and there's big penalties for wrongful disclosure. So you can reassure your patrons that the census is safe once that information is in the Census Bureau's database. That none of that is going to be shared out in a way that would reveal the person's identity, which is something that provides some sideboards for folks that are providing devices for online response. So this next series of slides is sort of the do's and don'ts of online response support. And the Census Bureau wants to emphasize that stakeholders and partners can support the census and can support self-response by making electronic devices available to the public for response. So libraries already have electronic devices, but other places you can stand up electronic devices at events. The Census Bureau will be doing this also, but only the Census Bureau is authorized to collect data from the public, and only the Census Bureau can offer the confidentiality protected by law. So what does that mean for providing online response support? You can make devices available to the public for response, and we encourage you to do so. Please make public devices available, to provide their own responses to the 2020 census, and make those available at an event or other public locations like a library, a clinic, a community center, a tribal office, a place of worship, or a school. So in public places, when you're making the device available, be clear that you're not an employee or representative of the Census Bureau. Don't confuse the public by putting a Census Bureau logo on the machine. You can use your own logo, and you certainly can use the Alaska Counts logo, which I'll go over in a little bit. And you can use the 2020 census logo on outreach materials to promote the 2020 census. We just don't want to imply that you, as a non-Census Bureau employee, represent the Census Bureau. So can you actually assist people with their response? So here's the answer. Only Census Bureau employees may collect responses directly from individuals. If you're providing devices for individuals to provide their own responses online, do not enter that individual's responses for them or watch them enter their responses. In other words, don't staff your device. You create an environment where individuals can respond without interference. This environment should ensure that someone's responses cannot be seen by anyone unless they are a sworn Census Bureau employee. So we really do take that confidentiality of that information seriously, and we would like you to as well. If a member of the public requests assistance in completing their form, please first direct them to the response option, online, phone, mail, paper, census taker visit to the home that best suits their needs. If they still request your assistance with online response, you can provide this assistance, but please inform them that you're not a Census Bureau employee and therefore their answers are not protected by law with you. Their response is only protected by the Census Bureau once their response is received. So can you actually assist people with their response? Yes. You'll see how easy the census form is, and I think by walking you through the census form, you'll see that you can probably assist them with the census form without actually having to look at their answers. But should they really want your help and assistance, you may do so. We just want you to tell them that you're not a Census Bureau employee. So here's some other quick do's and don'ts. In some parts of the country and perhaps some neighborhoods, a lot of our partners and stakeholders are going door to door to tell people how important the census is. And the question came up, should you visit homes to encourage response? Yes, you can go to homes to encourage response, but you may not go to homes to collect response data. So you can't take a mobile device and go door to door in your neighborhood. There are laws that prevent anyone other than a Census Bureau from collecting census data door to door. If you do want to go to door to educate folks, there are sideboards for that. We don't want to have folks ask questions about. There's already quite a few questions and a website where you can go about Census Bureau rumors, and there are some people that would take advantage of the census occurring to conduct fraud. So if you do go to door, make clear at the beginning of the conversation that you are not a Census Bureau employee. Limit your activities to handing out flyers or talking about the importance of the census. Do not collect response data. And they're encouraging to stop visiting homes by mid-May because we don't want any confusion about who is knocking on those doors. So some other just quick sideboards before we jump into the questionnaire. Should you call the public to encourage response? No. Placing calls to individual households regarding the census is prohibited by federal law. Should you conduct your own survey during the 2020 census? This is strongly discouraged. Some stakeholders want to do surveys to see how good their outreach efforts have been, but once again, we don't want to confuse the public, and we don't want to have people believe that they've already responded to the census. So wait till after July. How can you support the 2020 census? Encourage people to respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. If people express to you that they're unsure if others in their home completed the census for them or included them, have them respond to the census again. The Census Bureau does have processes in place to resolve duplicate submissions. You can remind people to cooperate with the census takers if they do get visited in their home, and emphasize to your patrons and others that the 2020 census is safe and secure. There are outreach resources available to you to print and post and all sorts of things at alaskacounts.org and at 2020census.gov. So if you need posters or flyers or any type of information, try those two resources first. And if you need anything additional, you can get a hold of us at our contact information. So where do people go for online response? You don't need a special app. You don't need a special download. There's nothing to download. You simply go to 2020census.gov, and there will be a quick link to respond to the census now. Once people press on that link, this is what, ta-da, this is what the questionnaire is going to look like. I want to walk you through a few things about this questionnaire. First of all, up here it says there's an official website. This is an official website of the United States government. Here's how you know. The .gov means it's official, and the HTTPS ensures that you are connecting to the official website and that any information you provide is encrypted and transmitted securely. So that's one thing. And then over here on the right side, you have FAQs that answer questions that are commonly asked, like what is the 2020 census? Am I required to respond? Are my answers confidential and safe? Who should complete the census? How do I change my answers? How long will the 2020 census questionnaire take? 10 minutes on average. How will the Census Bureau use the information I provide? And is it safe to complete the 2020 census questionnaire online? Will the results be published? Do I have to complete the 2020 census questionnaire for my household members? The answer to that is yes. So there's some quick FAQs there. There's instructions on how to complete the census. Who should complete it? It should be completed by a person who owns or rents the living quarters or any other person who is at least 15 years of age with knowledge of the household. Navigation, use only the next or previous buttons at the bottom of each screen. Do not use the forward or back buttons on your browser. If you want to change a response, if there's a question where you must choose a single response from a list, clicking another response will change your answers to that response. If it is a select all that apply question, you may click on a selected checkbox to unselect that box and remove it as one of your answers. Is there a session time limit? If you leave the 2020 census questionnaire inactive for more than 15 minutes, or if you do not submit, your answers will not be saved. You will need to start over. This questionnaire must be completed and submitted in one session. And then help with questions. If you need assistance on a specific question, use the help link that appears to the right of the question, and then submitting your questionnaire. Once your 2020 questionnaire is submitted, you will be able to access your information or change you will not be able to access your information or change any of your responses. After you submit your questionnaire and are shown the confirmation page, you may close the web browser. So those are the basic instructions here. This globe here will take you to back to this home page, which you're viewing now. And then I want to show you the language options. So this online census supports 13 languages, and all you have to do to get a translation or to get the form in a different language is click on the language that you want, whether it's Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Arabic. I think this is Cyrillic. Maybe that last one wasn't Arabic. Maybe that was Korean. This one will be Arabic.
Excuse me, Barb. I had a question, and would you like them as they come up or save them to the end?
If they're related to what I'm talking about, we can do them right now. If they're not, then we could save them to the end.
I think this one is, you were talking about the inactivity or non-submission timeouts. And the question we have is, what if your browser crashes or you have other technical problems and you restart the census and submit again?
Yes. Yes, you would restart the census and submit again.
Okay.
And you can, yep. So that's how the language options work. I think that's pretty slick. That you can just and it's on every single page in the census, so that you can click on those 13 supported languages. Remember that there are 59 other languages that are supported with language glossaries at 2020census.gov, and that alaskacounts.org has Alaskan Native language translations for some of the census materials. So here I am. I'm going to shape my future and start here, and I'm going to start the questionnaire. And this is the first question that we get is to please log in to the census. Use the materials we mailed to you or left at your door. All the information that you provide will remain confidential. And so if you did get materials left at your door or an invitation in the mail, it will have a 12-digit census ID. And that is something that you would enter here. Nobody needs a census ID to respond to the census online. So if a patron comes into the library and does not have their census ID, that's fine. Then you would just click here if you do not have a census ID. Where can I find my 12-digit census ID? If I click on that, it's going to show me the mailing I received, my invitation to respond, or it's going to show me my my survey that was delivered to my door. And that's where I would find the 12-digit ID. But I'm going to pretend that I did not get one. So I'm going to click, if I don't have a census ID, click here. I think that is going to be the majority of the folks that you get. So because I didn't have my census ID, which would link directly to my housing unit address for the Census Bureau to easily combine the data being received online with the housing unit, we're going to provide an address here. In order to collect your address, we first need to know where you will be living on April 1st of 2020. And I'm going to be living in a U.S. state. And so then they ask you for a complete street address. And I'm going to give a street address that I know from Gustavus, because I don't think Gustavus is mapped in their database because we don't have that 826. So let's see what they say about that street address. And they don't like that address. Please review. We are unable to process the address you provided. Now, I know that this is a real address because I happen to have lived at this address in Gustavus, Alaska, but I also know that I can't get Amazon or anybody to deliver to me because it's not on a national database of addresses. So they don't like it, but I'm going to submit it anyway. And they take it. So people in Alaska will encounter this a lot, right? Where it's like, it doesn't like my street address, it's not in the national database. That's fine. You just submit it, and the Census Bureau is going to do the work to find that location. They'll do the back-end work to make sure that that is hooked up to the correct housing unit. And then they want a name and telephone number. So you would enter, your complete name and a telephone number. And the reason they ask for the name and telephone number is to follow up just about this specific survey if they had questions. But they wouldn't call you for any other reason. So then you come to this, they want to ask you some questions about your household. So these are called the household questions. You press start to begin. And I'm going to say for the purposes of this that living at 89 Same Old Road on April 1st, 2020, that there are 2 of us. So, and the other person living at that house is going to be John Q. Smith. And it says enter names, and they've listed everyone who will be living or staying there, then continue to the next page. So then I don't need, but it also gives me the option to add another person. Like, oh yeah, I forgot, Aunt Mary's visiting for 3 months over April 1st. I'm going to add her in here. You could do that. I'm going to click to next. We do not want to miss any people who might be staying at 89 Same Old Road on April 1st, 2020. For example, children, related or unrelated, such as newborn babies, grandchildren, or foster children, relatives, such as adult children, nieces, nephews, cousins, or in-laws, roommates or other non-relatives, people without a permanent place to live. The names listed so far are Barb Miranda and John Q. Smith. Are there any additional people that you did not already list? Now, I sure wish that they had on here high school boarding school students, because I have one of those at Mount Edgecombe High School, and she should be, the high school students should be included on my 2020 census. College students are not. If they're living at a university, they get counted there. So remind your college students that they should be counted at their college town. But, I think here a leading question would be for Alaskans with Mount Edgecombe students or Galena students, boarding school, high school students, any high school kids that are at boarding schools for high school should be one of the leading questions here. But I'm going to leave that one alone. But if I wanted to add that person, which I will in my own census, I would click yes here, and I would add my daughter at Mount Edgecombe High School. So I didn't click no, so it wanted me to go back. So I'm clicking next now. On April 1st of 2020, will the house, apartment, or mobile home at 89 St. Mill Road be owned by you or someone in this household with a mortgage or loan, owned by you or someone in this household free and clear, rented, or occupied without payment of rent? So I'm just going to click on owned by me or someone in this household with a mortgage. Of all the people who will be living at 89 St. Mill Road, who will own the house, apartment, or mobile home? Well, I'm going to select all that apply. There's one with multiple response options. And that completes the household questions. Now it wants to ask the people questions. So I'm going to press start for my response. And it asks me what my sex is. It gives two options, and you may only select one of them. And then it asks for a date of birth. Yes.
I'm going to ask a question I think is related to where you are. If someone's college student is out of the country going to school on 1st of April, should they get counted?
I believe, according to the residency rules, that they would get missed in the census.
Okay, so
they would not be counted in the household census. And I'll go back. I saw Ruth's question come up just there. So they will not be. They would be some of those that are missed. We get to count all the international exchange students that are living in the United States. But if somebody's living out of the country, unless they're deployed military or government employees, there's really special and specific residency roles for them. But they would be missed because they are not residing in the United States, which is one of the criteria.
Okay, and you said you saw Ruth's question about whether...
Yeah. So the only two options available in the 2020 census for identification of gender are male and female. This has been, so the Census Bureau sticks really closely to the Office of Management and Budgets categories for race and ethnicity and gender. And right now, male and female are still the only options provided for identification. If people want to leave it blank, I believe that is I believe that might be an option. Maybe not after I've already. Let me go previous and see if I can resume. Yeah, it does look like it's forcing me to respond with either male or female. We'll try it on the second person and see if I leave it blank, if it lets me leave it blank. But those are the only two options available on the 2020 census for sex. So here you would enter in your date of birth. And then now we are into the ethnicity questions about Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. This is separate from race questions because people of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin can be from a variety of different races. So for this one, I'm going to put no, not of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. I could put yes, Mexican, American, Chicano. I can click multiple of these as well. So you can be of multiple Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origins, but you can't click these and then also click no. So I'm going to go back out and click no there. And then here you can are the questions about race. So you can collect one or more boxes and enter origins or not enter origins at all. So let's click white. Let's click American Indian or Alaska Native. you can click multiples of these. And I know for Alaskans, the question about American Indian or Alaska Native is of fundamental importance. And what our partners at AFN and other organizations are saying is please have person one, which is what I am on this form right now, and we'll see that in a second. The first person that you're answering the questions for, if you have a mixed race household, our partners, our tribal partners really want that person to be the American Indian or Alaska Native in the household. There's some federal program where this becomes very important for federal funding. And then here we would enter the name of the federally recognized tribe. And this will allow you to put in as many, I think up to 200. So if you wanted to identify in multiple ways, then you could. So you can see that there's quite a bit of room there for folks to respond. I know our tribal partners are doing a lot of outreach right now on how they want people to respond to this question. I would ask that you consult with your local tribes if you want to know more about that. Know that for the Census Bureau's purposes, race and ethnicity are all about self-identification. The Census Bureau employees will not tell, we do not want you as partners to tell people how to respond to this question. People need to be able to self-identify, but certainly as an education and outreach mode, our partners can encourage the response that helps get the proper designation for federal funding programs. So, for each race and ethnicity, you can come down here and say, I am other Asian, I'm Pakistani. All of this is about self-identification. You can put I'm Irish American and I'm Pakistani descent. This is a powerful piece for claiming what race you would like. For my children, they're both very excited about claiming American Indian and putting in their Yurok heritage on the census. His mom's so into it. So there's plenty of space here to respond to these questions, and there's more space than on the online form. So that's person one. I could go back and edit that person, and then you could start with person two. Person two, the questions start asking, how is this person related to person one, which is Barb M. Miranda? So is John Q. Smith my opposite sex husband, wife, or spouse? Same sex husband, wife, or spouse? Biological son or daughter, adopted son or daughter, stepson or stepdaughter, brother or sister, father or mother, grandchild, parents-in-law, son-in-law or daughter-in-law, another type of relative, just a roommate or a housemate, a foster child, or other non-relative. Those are all the options. And I do believe this is the first time in a census that we have the option of same-sex husband and wife or partner options. So I'm happy to see that. So I'm going to say opposite sex husband for the purposes of this questionnaire. And once again, they ask for sex. Before I click something, I'm going to click next and see what happens. And they want me to provide an answer to the question. But if I clicked next twice, it let me skip that question. So you can see that, I can leave that blank if I wish. Now, anytime you don't answer a question, you do increase the chances of a follow-up by a census taker to get a complete questionnaire. But just know that all of these questions can be, if people ask, they can be left blank. So what's John Q. Smith's birth date? I'm going to put January 1st of, I don't know, let's make them 51 years old. Next, I'm going to say Cuban, and Black from Jamaica, if I can spell it. And that gets me to through all the people in the household, and then it says final questions. And I click start, which we would like to make sure everyone is only counted once. Some people live or stay in more than one place. For example, some people stay with a parent or grandparent. They might be attending college. They might be in the military. They might be staying somewhere else to be closer to a job or a business. They might be in a nursing home or group home. So they're really trying to avoid double counts here. Do any of the following people usually live or stay somewhere else other than 89 Same Old Road? And I'll say, nope, they all stay there usually. And then I would click Submit Questionnaire. So what happens, and then you get a confirmation number. There's a 1-800 number. And you can save and print this screen so that people have something to show a census taker that might follow up before this falls off the workload. And then you can close the browser. But what I want to show you, as in addition to what we just went through, is what happens if people don't have an address. So first of all, I'm just going to open it up. Daniel, have there been any questions about the survey in general before I start a new one? I'm just going to show the beginning of what to do without a home address. Have there been any questions I can answer right now?
Sure. The main one that hasn't been answered yet is a question about whether teenagers, and I assume others who stay at shelters, be counted at the shelter. If you could talk a little bit about that.
So there is a special count for people experiencing homelessness. So people at shelters that use services, they're March 31st through right around April 1st, right around Census Day. There's going to be a special count at places like group quarters where people are sheltered. They'll be included in a group quarters count if they're sort of living in a shelter. There are also service-based enumerations where service providers there'll be a special count for those locations. However, if people feel like they got missed or weren't counted in those special group quarters counts, they can respond online, and the Census Bureau will do the work to remove duplicates. Group quarters, if people are living in temporary housing but get included in a group quarters count, they've been counted and shouldn't be counted twice, should not respond online again. But if they do, or if they're not sure they got counted, they should go and respond online, especially if they're not sure or are really transitory and were in a shelter over April 1st and then they were gone for the rest of the time. There's a lot of there is a special group. Let me just back up. There is a special group quarters that takes place over 3 days.
I'm sorry, Barb. Before you go there, I got some clarification from the questioner, and she says that the question was specifically about teen shelters in response to the statement that the high school would not count as group quarters.
So I guess I need more clarification on the teen shelters. Are these known locations with a manager, or are these just teens sheltering in place?
Alicia, let me go ahead and unmute you, and then if you could just explain a little bit more about the teen shelters, please.
Oh, okay. So in Fairbanks, we have a teenage shelter that is specifically only for teenagers. It's called The Door. It is a known shelter. I just want to make sure that shelters specifically for teenagers are going to be counted as group quarters.
Yes. The shelters and Alicia, what I would ask is that you email the location, the contact information for that shelter to me. And then I will make sure that it's in the Anchorage Census office's docket for the group quarters count. I'll verify that for you.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep. So the group quarters count is special. And people living in group quarters that are managed, you know, barracks, dorms, not high school dorms, but college dorms, federal prisons or any type of prison facility, hospitals, any place where people are living in a group quarters type situation, they will be counted in a separate count, separate from this. Those folks will get counted in a group quarters count. They don't need to respond online. However, if somebody's not sure come July whether they got included and they don't live in a group quarters anymore come July, and they're wondering whether they got counted, we encourage them to respond online. The Census Bureau will do the work to remove the duplicates. All right, so say somebody
and we had another question.
Okay.
I have a friend who has a house in the U.S. but is traveling for a few years. Lucky person and will not be in the United States on 1 April. Should they count themselves or no?
I'm going to have to read through the residency rules to get clarity around that. They have a physical address in the U.S., but they're not living here. I'm pretty sure technically that they don't get counted in the census. If they were to respond online from whatever lucky beach they're sitting on as they travel around the world, then I think the census questionnaire would guide them through, you know, where are you living right now? Well, actually, I'm living, you know, at the youth hostel in, I don't know, Croatia on the beach. You know, I think it would become clear that they're probably not supposed to count themselves if they were to put the address in of the home they own. You know what, let me read through the residency rules that we have just to get, you know, I'm pretty sure that those folks that are not residing in the United States at the time do not get counted if they're not deployed military or government employees on assignment or in those special categories of people. If they were to respond online, hopefully they would respond through the questions very carefully and the Census Bureau would put them in the right bucket. Any other questions, Daniel, before I show how somebody without an address would start the questionnaire?
Not in terms of counting.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start this questionnaire one more time. And I'm a library patron who's experiencing homelessness. I would not have a census ID because I would not have a housing unit for a survey to be left at or a mailing address to receive an invitation. So I would click there. And here I would say they need to know where I will be living on April 1st of 2020. Please select where you'll be living. Well, I'm going to be in the U.S. state. I'm going to be in Alaska. Oh, you know what? Let's go back and see if we can answer the question for the previous question real quick before we do homeless. Let's say I'm living somewhere else. If you will not be living in the United States, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, you do not need to complete the 2020 census questionnaire. So there you go. That answers that question for your friend. Yeah. Okay, so now I need to go back and we'll click on the link again. And I don't have a census ID. And I am going to be living in the United States. And here, you know, please provide your street address. Oh, well, I don't have a street address. Do you have a rural route address? No, I don't have one of those either. And then it does ask the question, will you be experiencing homelessness on April 1st of 2020? Yes, unfortunately, I will be experiencing homelessness. And then so here, please provide a city and a state or zip code where you will be living on April 1st of 2020. Also describe the physical location in the space provided. I'm going to put Gustavus, Alaska again. And then it wants you to provide as much information as possible. So I did remember those responses from before, which is weird. I'm going to clear the form actually next time. And I'm going to say, well, in Gustavus, I'm living in the campground by the city park on the Salmon River. So they want you to provide as much information as possible. And from the information I'm receiving is what they're going to do with this is they're going to hook these homeless, these people, for folks experiencing homelessness, they're going to link them to the closest service provider for homeless nearest to that, that physical location. And that's because they aren't linked to a housing unit. These responses will be put into the group quarters count, which includes the transitory unsheltered locations, and the group quarters count includes people that are experiencing homelessness. So here's the information I submitted. If this is correct, so hit submit. And if I wanted to make any changes, I could hit revise, and then it goes through the exact same types of questions as we showed previously. So that really is the demonstration of this online response option. Are there any questions at this point about anything I've talked about? And Daniel, I can't see the questions, so if there are any, please let me know.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything else about what you've been covering in terms of filling out the census.
Okay. Well, that's what I've got for you guys. As far as looking at the questionnaire, I want to reiterate that you may assist people by providing devices for online response. We do want you to make sure you identify yourself as not a census employee, and try to have them respond to the census on their own. You can see how easy it is to respond online. If people need assistance, please direct them to 2020census.gov. There'll be a phone number for assistance that they can call to receive assistance. If they really want your help with responding to the census survey, you may do so, but you need to let them know that their census answers won't be confidential until they're submitted via the online portal that I just showed you. So that's really the talking points from the Census Bureau is please help us with outreach. Please let people know that they can respond online. Please provide access points for people to respond online. Please respect the confidentiality of the information that they're providing, and ensure that there's a safe and secure space for people to respond online, and only really help them directly with online responses if they request it, and make sure you don't identify yourself as a Census Bureau employee.
And Barb, we just got one more question, and it was there's actually two questions now. One I think you might have done already, but the first one was if you wanted to share information about the mobile questionnaire assistance opportunities for partners. We had somebody joining late and wanted to know if you covered that, and I don't think you did.
Okay, so here's the, and somebody else I saw wanted the operational calendar for the 2020 census here in Alaska, and here it is. So the Census Bureau will be doing mobile, is transitioning into being able to provide mobile questionnaire assistance events. So people that have been doing recruiting and our partnership team here in Alaska are all gearing up to begin providing online response assistance starting March 20th. As Census Bureau employees, they can directly assist people with collecting the information. They're going to be happy to partner with libraries and tribal organizations and service providers for hard-to-count populations, including folks experiencing homelessness, and have a Census Bureau employee helping provide this assistance. So you might be hearing from some of us as we set up these events end of March all the way through July. So that's a new program that we're all just getting trained on, but you'll be hearing more and more about that. Partners can provide online response devices, and let people respond online. And if a Census Bureau employee is there, then those folks can get direct assistance from a Census Bureau employee. So that was one of the questions. Daniel, what was the other one?
That was actually it, the mobile assistance and the census operational calendar. I'm just now noting that the webinar will be archived so that other people can listen to it.
Yep, and we're doing it again on March 6th at 3 p.m. Another live viewing of this, which might be a little bit different or smoother. You never know, it'll be the second time around. So I want to thank everybody for your time and for your interest on this. Please send your folks to the Alaska State Library YouTube channel to see this training. Again, it'll be posted there, and we do have, we'll get this PowerPoint posted as well as the flyer that really details out all the do's and don'ts for partners with online response.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Barb. And the other thing is, I believe that you had to provide or you were asked for an email address when you signed into the WebEx, and if you did so, we'll send you a link to the video and to the handouts. And is there anything else at all? Oh, one other question, Barb. You're still there? Okay.
Yes.
What about people who come to local visitor centers? How are they counted? And then Donna Bach had a comment of saying, if Shirley is asking about tourists, the mobile response can record their home or household address regardless of what state they may be living in the Union. For example, if they were tourists visiting Alaska in June. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's a great thing to provide for Alaska tourists and especially and our seasonal workers that serve the tourism industry. And as you saw, the questionnaire will guide folks to provide the correct address. I know, I think some of this, we could pick up some numbers from our seasonal workers who might be traveling all winter elsewhere, and their usual residence is actually wherever they are for those 6+ months out of the year when they're working in the tourism industry. So encourage response, and if they're responding accurately to the questionnaire, it will guide them to be counted once, only once, and in the right place.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now, and want to thank everybody for their time and attention and for making sure that all Alaskans will be counted, or at least as many as humanly possible. Thank you.